to be chairing today. Before we get started, just the usual announcements. Be careful with the tables, because they do flip over. If your hot drinks are on it, just be careful. If you can, please keep your questions to the end, because we are recording it, and also please check that your phone is on silent. So it's our pleasure today to welcome Barnard and Gloria Mittmann from the ASP-Belong project, and their talk is on adventures in augmented social play, making the immersive classroom experience. Lina, over to you guys.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. We'll explain who we are and what this means in a second, but just to kick things off, I wonder if you would indulge me to just cast your mind back to the experience of being around 12 years old in that school year where you turned 13. Where I'm from in England, it's called Year 8. Different names in different school systems. I wonder what comes into your mind. Picture yourself at school in a classroom. And I won't ask anyone to say anything. This is just for in here. Is it a happy memory or not? That's the first thing. What kind of atmosphere did the classroom you were sat in have, the one that's come into your mind? Just hold that thought in your head and have a look at this delightful picture, which I will be absolutely transparent. I just found on the internet. This is, though, I know what it is. It is a bunch of Year 8 students in a school on their first day, photographed on their first day by their class teacher. And I just find this picture absolutely compelling. And yeah, just have a stare at it for a minute. And I wonder how we think everyone's feeling in this room. I wonder if we can tell just looking who's happy, who feels safe, who feels like they belong, and how much do we trust our assessment based on just what we see? Who's going to have a good year? Who's going to have a bad year? Who's going to have a good time through their teenagehood at this school? Who's not? Again, tuck that away, hold that in your heads. We'll come back to this. So, who are we? My name's Adam. My background is not academia. Hence, I'm a total imposter here. I'm a practitioner. I make theatre and film and sometimes audio drama. Sometimes I write journalism, and lately making games and handing over.
Hiya, I'm Gloria. I'm totally right here because I am a research psychologist by education. I mostly work around mental health and transitioning, early adolescence, young adulthood. And most of my work has been around serious game and intervention design. And Adam and I have worked quite a lot on very different games in the last couple of years, most of them around mental health, a lot of them in classrooms, in groups of people. And we met in a research group in 2018 called Die offene Tür, the open door, DOT. And this research group's aim was to develop digital experiences to improve young people's social well-being. And we were both a part of this. The idea is that everyone has invisible silos, invisible lives. So basically, if you're a child in a school class, your classmates won't necessarily know what your home life looks like. And in relation to that, we worked a lot with what we call COPME. I don't think that is a name anyone knows. It's basically children with a parent with a mental illness. And that is a topic that is quite relevant to what we're doing. And what we did was we used tech and storytelling with the aim to go into schools, into classrooms, and create digital experiences for those classrooms to improve the social well-being within the school or within the class. And in that project that both of us worked in, we trialed a couple of different digital experiences, and one of them came out to be quite promising, and it's called Lina.
Okay, so it was quite a luxury getting to try a bunch of things out. This is in our previous research group before ASP-Belong. And Lina, the basic premises of it, this is some glimpses of a prototype that we made during this previous project. The premise of Lina is very simple, that everyone in the classroom is playing as a young person, a bit like them, in a classroom a bit like this classroom, only one of their classmates has gone missing. And the gameplay is simply about trying to find out where this young person, their classmate, has gone and why. And to do that, they explore the classroom, and this is where the augmented reality on the smartphones or tablets comes in. They find things that she has left behind in the classroom, and in the course of finding these things, they start to piece together a story. And in order to progress through the story, what they must also do is collaborate together. So it's a piece that is partly a reflection on mental health and class climate, but also something that involves pro-social working together. Now, we prototyped this, and it was quite a technically ambitious thing to prototype. And if I'm absolutely honest, this thing, you've got some pictures of it in action, was kind of held together by bits of sellotape. It sort of just about worked. It worked enough for us to try it out in classrooms and discover that, one, kids really liked it, and two, to our delight, it seemed to have a measurable immediate effect on well-being and class climate. So we had this situation where our initial vision for this was quite epic and grand. It would be a multi-episode story that you'd play. Each episode would be the length of a lesson. So it'd be like a Netflix box set, and you'd slowly unfold this mystery like a great detective series. And it would work on anything, and it would never crash. And the reality was quite different because of the fact that we were really restricted in the funding on this previous project. Basically, this brilliant young man here pretty much did all the difficult work on his own, and it nearly broke him, but he then got a job here in Dublin. He's Portuguese. He got a job here in Dublin at Microsoft, so off the back of it. So I feel kind of good about it in the end. But we rapidly realized that our eyes were a lot bigger than our stomachs. So having made this one prototype, we needed to figure out what to do if we wanted this to go anywhere beyond being simply something that was interesting for its research outcomes, to show potential. And
yes, we're really cool. That's why we included these.
Gloria is really cool. So this is why, as some of you might be aware, we applied to Horizon Europe, to the 2020 programme, for funding to scale up something that we already had some evidence of its efficacy. And rather miraculously, via an 11-partner consortium that we put together to build this, we were successful. Just quickly, to sort of a sense of who works in ASP-Belong is a mixture of industry and academia, which befits the idea that it is about industry academic crossovers and about scaling up. There's us, we are the designers. There's Make Real, who are a extended reality software studio, and they are the technical hub of this. The Unicorn is a children's theatre in London. We'll come back to them. And then in terms of academic partners, there's the University of Birmingham, there's Queen Mary, and of course UCD, who we'll mention in a bit the way the different partners work on different elements. And across the EU, there's partners in Czechia, in Portugal, Austria, and Norway. And we embarked on what is now, because it's a Horizon project, has a ridiculous name, ASP-Belong, which is smartphone-enabled group psychotherapeutic interventions that boost adolescent mental health by supporting real-world connection and sense of belonging. But what that actually is...
I actually had a joke for that, and you just took that slide from me. So I'm going to go to the boring slide that comes after. Basically, we have 5 different work packages. The first one is to make one of these ASP interventions, like really scale it up, make it work. And the second objective is a little bit more researchy, so building a knowledge base around policy, around intervention practices in the 6 different countries we have. Then the objective is to try the ASP #1, this big thing we made, in 3 different countries. So we are trialing it in the UK, in Portugal, and in Czechia to cover quite a lot of Europe. Then there's another part of it that will start now, basically, where we look at the most vulnerable adolescents and see how can we use this intervention, how can we use ASP to include them even more. And then, and UCD is part of that, we have the objective to disseminate it, to get it out there, to have research around dissemination. And maybe this is an important part. So what actually is this augmented social play? What is ASP? It is a digital mental health intervention. It's around a narrative experience. It's around being played in a group together on phones or tablets, but in the same room. And it is supposed to foster social connectedness, class climate, and sense of belonging. And we said there's 6 pillars. I'm going to go over them very quickly. So there's a shared fictional narrative, there's cooperative gameplay, there's embodied psychotherapy, there's it's always going to be a safe space for children. It's easy to access, it's easy to use. That is actually not so easy, but we try. And it should foster a sense of belonging. And what feeds into this ASP, number 1, or ASP in general, is we want to look at the technical intervention. We want to make it cool, because as you learned, we are really cool. We want to have that storytelling element. It builds on the proof of concept that we just showed you. It builds on gaming in general. And it involves input from psychologists, from schools, from young people themselves. And we're going to talk about that even more. So what we did first was the groundwork, the fact-finding. We went into schools in all 3 countries. We followed the classes, the year 8 classes in the UK, equivalents in the other countries. We talked to the teachers, we talked to the kids, we did interviews and focus groups with psychologists. We explored all the state-of-the-art of the technical development around AR, because technology is moving fast, right? So what we had in the proof of concept could be evolved in this stage. We tried to define this whole thing we were trying to create into like core functions. What does it even need to be? What does it do? And very importantly, we worked with the Unicorn Theatre and with lots of amazing children to develop this thing. And I think there's a lot of psychologists in here. So I put this here to give you an overview of the relevant expertise we brought in with the psychology panel. So you can find this all over the intervention. It's about social psychology, contact theory. A lot is about contact theory, identity theory. There's arts, there's dance and movements. We have someone for peer-supported recovery, adolescent social networks, critical psychology and like non-labeling, solution-focused practice, and Sue Young, who I really liked a lot, with her anti-bullying in schools.
Okay, this is the most dainty little microphone.
Yeah.
So just a little bit about the Unicorn Theatre. So they are in London, and they're the UK's largest dedicated theatre for young audiences. And with and through them, we built a co-development group who are known as the Creative Associates, and they were all 12 to 13 when they started the project. And we met every Saturday for something like 20 weeks with them, and basically used them as our kind of compass. So sometimes it was just talking about their experiences and finding ways to communicate what it felt like to be them. Sometimes they would draw or write, or they would come up with ideas, or we would bounce ideas for the game or particular parts of the story around, or sometimes they would play things. And also there was a kind of development thing for them, so they learned about games and game making. And that was a really sort of a wonderful process to have, and to have that kind of constant. What actually Georgia Dale, who's the head of engagement at the Unicorn, talks about breathing the same air. There's just something about when you're making work for this age group, constantly being with that age group. This is just some of the. There's so much material and work, and lots of it found its way into the game in different ways. But they were pretty remarkable and a really diverse and interesting group of young people. In addition to that, we did cultural youth exchanges. So we took these young people from London and comparable groups from Portugal and Czechia, and we had 3 exchanges, one in each of the 3 countries over the course of a year, where they would come together and they would look at the similarities and differences of being a young person from their respective countries and cultures. And actually, it was really ultimately more about similarities. The experience of early adolescence and the experience of school are not that different, I think, across any European country. But there are also some really key things to look out for. And because we were trying to create a story that was culturally portable so that it could translate effortlessly and feel authentic in any country, it was really important to do this work. One of the great joys of this was the friendships that were forged through it, and the fact that these young people are still in touch with each other through WhatsApp groups. And
we don't have that photo here, but like literally they all cried.
Oh my God.
The last one. It was so, I mean, not nice, but it was nice.
and just an example of some of the work we were doing around emotional literacy with these young people, which has very much fed into parts of the game that you'll see. And in addition to this, the game relies heavily on voiceover, and all the voiceover is real young people. And so in the case of the English language voices, which you are going to experience in a minute, these were recorded by members of our co-development group, none of whom were professional actors. So it was a lovely element as well to sort of take them through that process. And I do think it has had quite a meaningful impact on them, which is really nice to know. Back to you.
And then we built the thing, and that was a lot of work, and that was a lot of prototypes, and that was starting with like little squares and trying to make the phones connect with these little squares, and hours of testing and hours of crashes and trying to figure out why they crashed, and lots of work from our technical partner Makereal, lots of handling phones and updating to new builds. And lots of play testing with lots of kids and schools going in there and then spending half an hour telling them, yes, we're going to have to restart this, but this time it will hopefully work. They're all great, by the way. And 2 years and 680 bills later, we are where we are now, and we have created Lina. And Lina is our first intervention, ASP number 1, and it consists of 4 technical sessions, so 4 sessions where each kid gets a phone. And these sessions are considered to be 1 lesson, so basically they scale for the different countries and different schools, they scale between like 45 minutes to 60 minutes, depending on what the lesson length is. And first there's going to be a setup that the teacher does where they input all the students. The game can handle absentees and kids joining only a couple of sessions and not all of them. Then there's the first 2 technical sessions of Lina, and then there's a reflection session to like get them to think about it a bit more. And then there's another 2 sessions, and then finally there's a final reflection session. And while in the trial we do have facilitators running these sessions, the whole intervention is made in a way that the teacher could lead it without external facilitation.
Okay, so just a quick glimpse into how this gets going. The first thing is a teacher has to set up a class. This happens before that first class play session. It takes about 15 minutes. They simply have to enter names, at least first names, so that kids can identify themselves in the app, because every kid has their own kind of identity. The app, by the way, never uses the internet, so nothing goes into the cloud. It is entirely local network based. This is also an accessibility thing. The teacher can define the gender, if they know the gender of everyone in their class. They don't have to know. They can define things like whether this person is comfortable reading out loud, which is really important because there's parts of the game that involve that, but if they're not comfortable, the game will steer away from those players having to do that. They can talk about access needs like subtitles and so on. Just to mention, because we're mentioning wellbeing and so on, within the game, the students can continue to amend those settings for themselves. But there's also, and this is quite important from a safeguarding perspective, the ability to privately communicate with your teacher that you're affected by issues raised in the game. This discreetly alerts the teacher. It does so in a way that it doesn't immediately show the teacher who has asked for help, but the teacher can then, when they know that they're not overlooked, find out, and the teacher can then follow that up with the student. So there's this kind of mechanism for sort of declaring something that you might not be comfortable voicing. Every episode of our 4 chapters of the story, every episode follows the same basic structure. The outer shell is the bit where you kind of log in and claim your name and get into the game. Pre-play is the little moment that bridges you from the outer shell into gameplay itself. Gameplay, we define it as having 3 acts, like a movie. Say, Act 1 is always kind of setting up the premise of that episode. Act 2 is the main meat on the bone. It's the central kind of game loop of that episode. And then Act 3 is the kind of denouement leading towards what we call the boss puzzle. There's always some big thing to solve at the end of it. And then crucially, and the way the game works is it knows when the lesson is going to end, and so it scales time according to that hard stop point so that the lesson will end on time. So for the final 5 or 6 minutes, there's post-play, which is a space where young people are given a moment to just unwind, cool down, and reflect on what they've just experienced before putting phones down and ending the session. And that leads us to, perfect, 20 minutes past. We would like to invite you to play the first 20 minutes of the first episode of Lina. Okay, just, yeah, thank you so much for playing, for indulging us.
That's absolutely lovely to watch.
Yeah, and well done for doing it in pairs. I was saying to a few people, but that is actually, the doing it in pairs is a method for people who have access needs that would mean they couldn't do it on their own. So it is something, we call it the buddy system, but obviously normally it's 1 device per student in the room. And obviously this is what you just did, so I can whiz through these slides. And you found your journal and you started hunting for objects, and one of the key things here is that different people will have found different objects and therefore will be holding different information about Lina, will have seen different sides of her, and that information sharing and that idea of different perspectives is really important. At this stage, the job in episode 1 is just to build up a picture of this rather intriguing classmate who came and went and kind of left a bit of a kind of sort of feeling in her aftermath. In the next part of the game, had you continued, you would have actually suddenly been interrupted by another text from Lina saying, I left something specifically for you in my backpack, coat, whatever, which would be an object you hadn't yet found. So you'd have to go and find that object and search it in the AR to find a little clue sheet that gave you part of a mysterious puzzle figure. And if you found other people who had the same pattern and arrows, you would find that if you put your sheets together, you would have a digit for Lina's padlock that is on her backpack. If, as a class, you then put all your digits together, you would be able to open her backpack, in which you would find her diary, which is locked. And you would find this very strange object, which no one knows what to do with. And that will be the end of the episode. So then episode 2 becomes about this strange object. Could you find a way to open this? So hence the boss puzzle thing we mentioned earlier. But this second episode is about memories of Lina. So rather than objects, what you're doing is you're reconstructing together memories of encounters with her outside school, where her behavior was very unexpected and not within the norms of your kind of social world. And there's 3 different memories, and the memories take the form of these white card model boxes, and it's round table play. So 4 of you are pointing at a table and you are moving these bits around to reconstruct together collaboratively the memory as you had it of these incidents, one of which is running into her in town, another of which is a residential school trip, a kind of overnight trip, which is a thing that a lot of classes around this age do as a kind of big bonding moment, where Lina's behavior was very odd and where she actually ran away. And so there's a lot of questions now being raised. Why are these behaviors occurring? In the course of this, you also find little fragments that allow you as a class to open this, and lo and behold, inside it is a key, and the key opens the diary. Now, episodes 3 and 4 are a little different. They focus much more on reading the pages of Lina's diary, and it's important to say that Lina has left a note at the beginning of her diary saying, if you find this, I want you to read it. And episode 3 focuses a lot on Lina's experience of joining a class midway through a term and of being new and of having done this quite a few times and struggling to constantly recalibrate and form new friendships. And there were various references to her home life and particularly her mother, but nothing is really fully explained at the end of episode 3. And part of the game, like any detective series, is to keep people guessing as to what exactly might be going on and theorizing and actively trying to imagine. Episode 4 unpacks the story. So it's a story about living. We mentioned at the beginning COPME, Children of Parents with Mental Illness. It's a story about living with, it's just Lina and her mum live together, And her mother has what we would recognize as a mental health issue, what we probably call depression. So her mother is incredibly loving and incredibly devoted to Lina, but goes through these massive swings between highs and lows. And when she's low, she just can't do anything. And she's just struggling. She's just de-energized. So, for example, there's a plot line about Lina having had to go to parents' evening instead of her mum because her mum just didn't want to go, or having to do the shopping. But basically, she's having to go beyond what is normal for a 12 to 13-year-old to cope. And it has a happy ending because all through the story, we've dropped this character called Auntie Anya, who's Lina's favorite aunt, her mum's sister. And basically the ending is the reason they have suddenly left for school in the middle of term is because Lina's mum has realised this is not a good way to be living and they can't go on like this. And actually she's recognised that she needs help. So they're going to go and live with Anya in a different town. Lina's mum is going to get help. Anya's going to help look after Lina. And Lina's going to go back to, in fact, the school she was going to before this one. So it's a happy ending. And she's left this deliberately behind, knowing she would leave, as a kind of recognition that she never really revealed her true self to her classmates. So she wants them to see her in absence, as it were, because at some level we all sort of need to be seen. So that's kind of how the story wraps itself up. I'm conscious of time. Should I just plow to this? Do you want to? Yeah.
So I think this is just a bit of insights into what the post-play looks like. Post-play is the last 5 minutes of each of the technical sessions where they are being brought back to like you are not in your character anymore. You are now back into like being yourself, taking a little bit to reflect on what has happened in this session, taking a little bit of time to reflect how am I feeling now. Taking a little bit of time to reflect on how the class worked together and just like general like calm vibes. And we're gonna basically jump over these. These are the 2 reflection sessions and these are basically what the teacher gets to work through with the class together. We know the teacher is actually also just a player, so it's not like the teacher is like this hierarchy, like a high hierarchy person, but the teacher explores this whole thing together with the students. And then just like some final information, like we have started a trial 2 weeks ago, I think, which means now it is being trialed in 3 countries with 40 classes per country, so 120 classes. It's very exciting and very scary. And we're already trying to find excuses why it didn't work. No, it's sounding like it's going well. We're going to test effectiveness. We're going to test the best way to implement it. And I think this is like a big point about this. Like, how do we actually manage to, after this trial where we have money to send people to classrooms, how are we going to get it into schools? How can we equip teachers to be able to play this with their classes? We're going to do cost effectiveness evaluation and qualitative evaluations with the kids and the teachers. And we already had some ideas floating around about what we could do next. I do think there's quite a lot of opportunities to work with this kind of format. With other narratives, with other settings, and with other target groups. So you can play this with adults. You can have like one of these murder mystery dinners just led by phones. Why not? You could play it at children's birthdays with a group of kids. It doesn't need to be a classroom. It could be a youth center. And it can obviously be other narratives and other topics because the narratives can change. The concept of like collaborating to find out and learn about these narratives will stay. And we also have a lot of ideas, so see you in a couple of years when we present the next thing. This is the prettiest slide. This is our webpage where you can find more information. You've been amazing players. I really enjoyed watching you play the game. Thank you.